let's talk about how people read CVs. Of course, look, there is no right answer here, right? Everybody has a different approach, okay? But here are some generalized things to be thinking about. I think there are two types of broad approach. There is scanning the CV, reading the CV. Now, when you're scanning the CV, that's simply, famously, you'll hear people say the 6-second rule or the 5-second rule or the whatever insert. Everyone has a different approach here, right? 6 to 10 seconds or 15 seconds. What they're meaning is that's how long they're spending on a CV. Now, you might think that's outrageous and ridiculous. Here's 150 CVs, review them. And you say to yourself, well, do you know what? I'm going to read every single one of them. These individuals, they deserve it. Yes, right. And as you got your cup of coffee, you go through the first one, reading it. Then you read the second one. By the third, you're thinking, this is all kind of looking the same here. Yeah, the summaries are the same. It's kind of the same language, but I'm not really getting much here. I'm having to do a lot of, you know what? I'm going to start scanning, right? So often what you'll find, generally speaking, your CV is being scanned. Now, if we say your CV is being scanned, what do we mean? We mean that the individual, and now here, I've got some props, okay? Because typically it's happening online. Now and again, people print CVs. I often like to print CVs because it's something physical, right? We can refer to them, we can touch them, right? I think that's quite useful. But typically it's online. To give you an idea, what people are doing is going, okay, so, yeah, right, that was it, right, that was it. I see this happen a lot with senior executives, a lot, okay? They maybe haven't read your CV when they should have done. They're very, very busy. They're flying by the seat of their pants. Here's a CV, okay? Okay, business analyst. Netflix, interesting. Right, what they've done is just kind of scanned, looking for interesting keywords, okay? It is, if you think about it, outrageous, right? This is your life. This is your work life, your future. How dare they? If you put yourself in their position, it's very, very complicated. Very complicated stuff, right? Because they're not an expert in that particular domain, typically. They're not sure. They've got so much else going on. They're very stressed, and this is the last thing they want to be thinking about. Even though, right, it's talking about your future here, right? But often prepare for the scan. So your CV needs to work for that scan. Now, what they're doing is they're looking at the top section, right? Then they're coming down, and they're basically open. They're open to understanding and taking in some information from page one if it's printed out, and then page two, right? Then if there's a page two, and this is typically how they'll be doing it. Essentially, especially when they're in a meeting. I've had this so many times. The 3 CVs, the 3 are on your desk there, and you have had a look at them, right? Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, well, first one we want to talk through is Bob. You'll see the guy go. Typically a guy or a girl or a lady, right? Go, yeah, Bob, tell me about Bob, right? So then I have to, they haven't read it, okay? I now need to, as a hiring manager, for example, say, well, yeah, if you see, he's gone through here and there, and there's an interesting perspective there, yeah, and you'll see them do this, right? What they're doing there is they're looking for anything interesting, right? When they're doing this. You see, they're not reading it, okay? Right. So, now, that's a particular example here, but you must prepare for your CV to be scanned and read. Okay, scanned and read. Now, let's talk through that a little bit more, okay? On screen, look at your CV as it stands and take the first half of it, right? That is usually what people are scanning. We had a guy, Andreas, he was in TikTok Live, one of my TikTok Lives recently, and he was talking about the CVs that he reviews as a recruiter, and he did 150 in a particular day, and he popped into the TikTok Live and then found himself hearing me talking about it. But it was interesting hearing his perspective, though, because what he was saying is, look, it's on screen. I'm not printing them out. I used to. Sometimes I do if there's a small amount, but when there's hundreds, it's on screen, and I'm just it's the top half of above the fold, as the phrase would go, right? Meaning above the fold of a newspaper, right? So half your if you take the first half of your CV, that's often not all the time, but that's what's being scanned. Okay. Now, if you filled that with just education, if you filled that with a personal summary that is exactly the same, we'll get to this, but it's exactly the same as everybody else's, right? Unbeknownst to you, okay? If you're just generic, that's very difficult for the individual, okay? There's another recruiter was in TikTok Live recently saying what the first thing they do is they check for spelling mistakes. That's an easy way. Okay, typo, delete. Next, right? If you can't be bothered, their view being if you can't be bothered. Okay, so they haven't scanned it yet. What they've just gone is any typos, any spelling, any silly spelling, right, out. And then often what they're doing is just searching for keyword, right, 2 keywords. There was an individual recruiter from the UK in TikTok Live the other day. They were saying, I'm looking for 2 keywords. And if those 2 keywords are in project management, for example, if they're in the CV, good, then I'll do a quick scan. And what they mean is the top half, and then maybe they'll scroll down. So in that scan, how are you helping? We will come to formatting, okay, but just be aware they're scanning it. So they're just looking down and they're looking for keywords, right? Which keywords? Again, we can come to that, right? We'll talk through that. When they're reading, that's much different. When they're reading, you've got a lot more chance, okay? When they're reading, that's great. They're typically going to sit there, they'll sit there with a mug of coffee and they'll go through it, right? And they will start at the top and read down. No, they might skip some sections, they might, okay? But generally speaking, we're a bit safer once they're reading, okay? When I say safe, as in hopefully they're building a picture of you, right? But understanding how people are using your CV, I think, is step 1. Absolutely step 1. You've got the scanning, you've got the scrolling, okay, which is essentially a scan. That looks interesting, okay, and then those are actually reading it. But there's another aspect here, AI. So many companies are using some kind of AI system to, I don't agree with it, but they're using it to match the job specification and the CV. Because someone somewhere, typically a geek trying to sell a system, right, to make money, has gone, isn't it good that you have a job spec, right? If you've got the job spec, okay, and then we'll scan, right? We'll give you a match. Now, the problem with this is that very quickly there's an arms race, okay? Because AI, at the moment, not very good. Just say that again, not very good, okay? Very good at summarizing, very good at coming up with ideas and so on. But in terms of an AI being able to say, this is a great candidate because they match, okay? What are they matching? Well, they match, you said Excel, and there's Excel is in the CV, okay? What did they do with Excel? Right? Now we've got a problem. So yes, many companies are using AI. How do you prepare for it? Okay, and there are goodness knows how many old wives' tales, as the phrase goes, right? On take as many keywords. Use AI to generate all the keywords for this particular role. Put them in white in the CV. Yeah, you could try, but I think when we're dealing with AI, we have to trust in the process. Now, I know that sounds potentially crazy. My approach here is, I have deep concern about using AI to try and find interesting, relevant CVs. Essentially, I think keyword matching can be useful, right? To say, well, look, we don't want a CV if it doesn't mention Oracle blah blah blah, because the person has to manage the Oracle blah 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 system. If it doesn't mention that, don't show me. Fair enough, right? Because what one is assuming, we're assuming that the only people that can do that job have a CV that says Oracle blah blah blah. Okay, so that's fine for that type of role and approach, but for so many roles, the thing that we're doing that we need someone to help with, AI doesn't know that. It's not keyword based. Okay, it's generically keyword based. So we're going to have to infer from their CV. We've got to infer from their CV how we move forward, right? Whether that individual is one we want to speak to. So when it comes to AI, my recommendation is write your CV for a human. Don't write it for AI, because a human is going to read it eventually. No. I think this is good advice. I think this is accurate, because the best AI systems will still be looking for things that are read and are relevant for a human. The crappy AI systems, actually, by all means, you can try and game them with dozens of different keywords, and so I'm not sure how successful that is or is going to be. So I would, when it comes to AI, I would not over panic. Preparing your CV for a human, I think, is the best approach. And then ideally, it's got keywords for keyword scanning in there. It's got the skills that you care about in there, because we're making sure that it's readable and relevant and valid for a human. In which case, it should be fine for AI. But look, we just don't know. By all means, go and Google and search for all of these. There's a massive industry now, cottage industry you might call it, of people saying, we'll scan your CV, and we'll reformat it for your job. Yeah, give us a job spec and we'll reset your. Try them by all means. I think the quality of the systems is a question mark, but there's a fundamental assumption here, and that is that the job spec, right? The assumption is the job spec's accurate, and the amount of times I've seen it where the job spec is completely, is very badly written. The company doesn't quite know. What we really want is another Graham. We want another Graham or another Jane. That's what we want. Okay, because Graham's moved on or been promoted or whatever. Okay, so what was Graham and Jane like? And where's their duties? Right, let's get the duties file up. Okay, oh, that's not quite. Yeah, exactly. We'll put in that, and put in this, and put in that. Okay, and try that. Okay, that's the job spec. Submit. Right. In some cases, they're saying, "Hi there, ChatGPT. Can you create a job spec?" Okay, so the assumption that the job spec is accurate as well, right, is a challenging one. So when it comes to AI, don't overplay its importance. Certainly today, right? I'm sure in the future it will get better and better and better. Okay, but crappy data in, crappy data out. So when it comes, if you've got a crappy job spec, you're going to realize very quickly that the AI is going to do a bad job of presenting CVs to you. And then what I've seen happen quite often, and I've had lots of colleagues comment about this, is where they eventually go, "Oh, show me the CVs that came in," right? So the actual process starts. They tried the AI, but right. So there's a perspective. I think the best possible advice I can give you, I think, is prepare it for a human, because really good AI will be looking for that. And then often the AI isn't helping in the process, and we just have to go and get the CVs anyway. There are thousands upon thousands of people employed in recruitment and in HR. And yes, potentially that could change and could be impacted dramatically by AI. But where we are today, it's human. Okay, so format it for the human first.